Now, you actually interviewed two Queensland police officers for your podcast recently, and you disguised their voices and names, just calling them Paul and Lisa. And Paul was the officer who wrote you that letter that I read out. Let's just have a quick listen to some of what he said to you in the podcast.
I do acknowledge that there is a problem with domestic violence in society, and we need to deal with it. But it deeply concerns me that it's become a gender-driven issue, that it's pushed on us, that there's always males that are perpetrating domestic violence and the males must be sorted out. I find that incredibly disturbing and upsetting, and it's incredibly unjust. Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, the thing that upsets me the most is, in the end, the consequence that I see that's most destructive is that fathers are often alienated from their children through the use of domestic violence orders. Mm-hmm. The orders become so powerful and have such a strong effect on men and on proceedings through the family law courts that men often find themselves in the position where the courts are saying, well, we're not sure that we should grant you permission to see your children. That's the ultimate injustice of it.
So fathers are being alienated by these DVOs, and Bettina, we've talked about this in the past. The fact of the matter is that the legal system has become quite corrupted around this. We've got family law solicitors actually advising women to make complaints, exaggerate complaints, even make false complaints in order to get a better result later in court when it comes to child custody and other matters related to the divorce.
Mm-hmm. And they can use really trivial examples. We heard, kicking over the watering can or yelling at a woman. A woman can say, I was afraid he would do something. You don't even have to have alleged he'd done something. Just simply fear can be enough to get a violence order. And then that carries enormous weight in family law proceedings. The Albanese government has a bill in place and going through Parliament to give even more of the assets, the family assets, to the domestic violence victim. So if she gets that violence order, she gets more of the assets. I mean, it's just incredible how we're incentivizing false allegations.
Yeah, well, there were two police officers that you actually spoke to. The other one was a female officer named Lisa. And she says she's seen abuse of domestic violence claims and orders for later benefit in family court. Exactly the same thing we're just talking about. She's seen that as well.
This man, he was guilty until proven innocent. And I'm sorry, but I always thought that in our country, it was the other way around.
Yep.
You are innocent until proven guilty. And with the extreme amount of impact that this can have on people's lives, I don't understand why it's being used so flippantly, why people are being allowed to use it as a weapon against their partners.
Do we need to outlaw and have penalties for lawyers who act in such an irresponsible manner? I mean, it's disgusting that we can't trust sworn legal officers in our nation to do the right thing, but this is happening a little too often. Should it be a crime to coerce a client into making an exaggerated or false claim against a spouse?
Yeah, we're actually looking into that and whether we can do something to punish, as you say, to have some sort of penalty for lawyers who give that sort of advice. Certainly they shouldn't be giving that sort of advice, but how we follow that through is another question. We're also looking at this whole system stinks. I mean, this is not the way our law is supposed to operate, that you can make an allegation with no evidence, which ultimately ends up with the man being put in jail. Because if he breaches that order, he could be sent to jail. How is this possible in a system where you're supposed to have evidence of a criminal offence? So there are possible legal remedies, legal avenues to challenge this whole system, and that we've got some very serious lawyers looking at that as well.
Now, that policewoman herself was in a violent marriage, and she was a domestic violence victim herself. She had a husband with a mental illness and had to get herself out of a difficult situation. So she totally gets the risks. Here's a little more of what Lisa said.
I'm not concerned about women in relationships that are violent. I'm concerned about people in relationships that are violent. People are, and that is the biggest issue that I have with the way that things are these days, is that it's so gender biased. Yep. There's the investigation process is almost being taken away from us. It's not the person that needs protection, it's the person that we're going to look better for protecting.
So she's saying that they're not rewarded for looking after the person that needs protecting, but only the person that'll look better for the police force and the government to say that they're protecting, which is almost always the woman, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's worrying that we had to disguise those voices. I know it's a bit difficult to hear them, but that says something to me too. These police are too nervous to speak out openly. And most of the police even people who've retired for 15 years will say to me, I don't dare talk publicly about this. What does that say about our system? That to tell the truth about what's happening in our justice system means you put yourself at risk of what? The police say they risk of being locked up themselves, of false allegations being made against them, which end up with them being imprisoned. Everybody knows this is happening right through the system.
Okay, one last clip of Lisa from your interview I want to play. Here she is describing a situation where she and a partner were called to a job after a complaint from a woman. They arrived to find the husband pretty badly scratched up, yet very reluctant to talk about it. But when Lisa explained to him that if he didn't talk, then all that they would have to go on was what the woman said, then he finally opened up.
It got to the point where she was scratching him and digging into him and causing him injuries. And where it came to a head was he's pushed her and said, it was something like, get away from me, bitch. Oh, great, of course. But if somebody's scratching and assaulting and hurting me, I'm probably going to use more colourful language. But he just pushed her away, called her a bitch, and so she called police.
And what happened then?
So what happened is, from the investigation that I conducted, because in my opinion I conducted a holistic investigation, I determined that he was the person that was in need of protection. He was the person that needed to have a domestic violence order taken out to protect him. So I took her into custody. And the look of shock and horror on her face, and she literally said to me, but I called you, like that would make a difference. She was the person who had caused harm and violence and fear and threats to this man who was just trying to live, trying to do his thing.
Yeah.
That's pretty awful stuff. But Tina, how do these cases usually pan out when police officers do apprehend the woman and try to protect the male?
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, it depends. Sometimes you can get a violence order against a woman, but I've heard of cases where police have had prepared the evidence on that sort of case, gone before a magistrate, and the magistrates have refused to accept it and turned it around and charged the man, and convicted the man. I mean, the magistrates are another story altogether. They're under such pressure to keep their heads down, to never attract any public attention and of course their biggest fear is that something happens to a woman who asks for a violence order and then, wasn't given.
Yeah.
And then they get, absolutely demolished.
Yeah.
And so magistrates uniformly are complying with this unjust system. I mean, from beginning to end, the men are up against it.
Yeah. Okay, now all of this has been greatly amplified by these new coercive control laws that are being brought into almost every state by Labor governments across Australia. This is where it no longer needs to be physical violence that's at the heart of the problem, but just manipulation and control of a psychological nature. But wouldn't that be a negative for women perpetrators more, Bettina?
Well, it would if the laws were just, but they're setting up. I mean, I've mentioned, I think, to you before, David, the funny thing is, we're going to introduce these laws in New South Wales a couple of years ago, and then women's groups got nervous that women would be misidentified as perpetrators, and they held the whole thing up. They didn't roll it out for at least a year while they got police officers, female police officers, into police stations across the state to teach police to only charge men. And that is the way the law has been framed, and that's the very clear rule. the police know that they have to only charge males. I mean, they could try to buck the system. I mean, interesting talking to police, because they will say, if I wanted to charge a woman, I'll be up against it. I'll have to, my superiors will put me through the ring, whatever the word is, really make me jump all sorts of hoops. I'd have to justify an enormous amount of paperwork, and you get a reputation for doing the wrong thing as a police officer.
Yeah. So it's really two-tier policing by gender. I mean, we've got one set of policing for men, one set of policing for women, different standards, two-tier policing, as they say. In the UK, they're talking about between the left and the right in the UK, or the woke and the not woke. But here it seems to be between male and female, right? That we've got this two-tier policing. It's quite scary stuff. We're going to be talking to Rob McMullen, a natural law expert, in the next segment of our show about the connection, I guess, between gender and politics, right and left and male and female. It's quite interesting. But it's fascinating stuff. Bettina, thanks very much for your time. A quick plug I know you want to give for your organisation and the great work that you do and you continue to do. It's amazing, really, your energy and that conference and how you keep the fight up with very little support. But, on behalf of Men of Australia, I think I could say thank you for your work. Tell us a little bit about how people can get to you and see things.
Well, I have a website, and that will give you links to other things. I mean, the most important thing I would like people to follow is, firstly, my Substack. It's a big platform of writers called Substack, and if you put in my name at Substack, you'll find my blog, and that's where I'm not only exposing what is happening in Australia to men, but also calling for help with various campaigns I'm running. This political campaign I want to run for the next election, all sorts of things we can do to change the current dire situation for men and boys in this country. So please look at Substack. My blogs are free. I'm putting up more. I stopped doing YouTubes for a while. I'm now back into them, and I'll probably set up a new podcast very soon because I'm having so many people coming to me. I'm just about to interview police investigator, police prosecutor, who was in the system for about 20 years, and he's telling me all his stories. Every week I have people coming from all over Australia wanting to talk about what's going on, and I can't resist exposing some of that to the general public.
Yeah, well, it's depressing to have to, and receiving all that, it's like you get overwhelmed and you want to help, but there's only so much that you can do, and you do a lot, and we really do appreciate it. Bettina Arndt, thank you very much. Have a wonderful Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, wonderful festive season, and we'll catch you next year on the show.
You too, David. Thanks so much for letting me on the show. It's pretty rare these days. I've been pretty much cancelled by mainstream media, and I do appreciate you giving me a voice.
Here at The Other Side, we do not get more than $1 billion of taxpayer money like the ABC does to waste on fun stuff that we and our friends like while ignoring the public that we're supposed to serve. We have to rely on your support of this show. But I also hate asking for charity. So we've done a deal with what I think is the best VPN service in the world so that you can support this show and get excellent value for yourself in return. Private Internet Access VPN is a virtual private network. You download their app onto your phone, your TV, your computer, whatever you use, and it'll route all your data through a different server location so that you can't be tracked by the prying eyes of big government and big corporations. It keeps you and your family truly safe, and it will not massively slow down your internet speeds or make it harder to use your devices like some VPNs do. Private Internet Access, PIA VPN, is quick and easy to install, and once you've downloaded it, that's pretty much it. You can sign up using our special Other Side code for less than $3 a month. Unbelievable. That is a whopping 83% off the normal price, and you'll get the first 4 months free, and you will be helping our show a lot. So get onto it, piavpn.com/otherside to get the special deal. And get this, if you've got a Netflix account, by signing on through a server in another country to Netflix, like the US, for example, you'll get access to that country's library of Netflix shows on your account as if you were in that country, which is also great if you want Netflix in a different language or something. piavpn.com/otherside. If you like that clip, there's more where that came from in our full show, The Other Side. You can watch it right here, the latest episode. And please subscribe to our channel by pressing the subscribe button right here or down here. And remember to click that notification bell too. It all helps. Join us and become part of The Other Side.